It's just a migraine, Daniel told himself. Wincing as the stabbing pain behind his left eye pulsed with intensity. But deep down, he knew this one felt different. The first twinge hit him during his morning commute, right as he stepped onto the subway platform in downtown Toronto. A subtle throb, almost easy to dismiss. But by the time he reached his marketing firm's office on the 22nd floor, the discomfort had intensified into a piercing ache that made the fluorescent lights overhead unbearable. Daniel Morgan was 37, newly promoted, with a wife and 2 young kids at home in Mississauga. He was the kind of guy who powered through everything: colds, stress, even a fractured wrist he once ignored for 2 days. So a headache? That was nothing. He dimmed his computer screen, popped 2 ibuprofen, and forced himself to focus on the presentation slides for his upcoming pitch. But when the letters on the screen started swimming and he found himself squinting with one eye shut, he grew uneasy. "Dan, you okay?" asked Mira, his coworker, catching him massaging his temples for the 3rd time in an hour. "Yeah," he lied. "Just a bad migraine. I get them sometimes." That wasn't entirely true. He had only had a few migraines in his life, mostly in college when he pulled all-nighters and lived off energy drinks. But the word migraine sounded better than, "I don't know what's wrong with me." By noon, he couldn't take it anymore. The pain had tunneled deep into his skull, and now, something even more disturbing had joined the mix. A weird shadow creeping into the edge of his left eye, like someone drawing a curtain halfway across his vision. He blinked, rubbed his eye. The shadow didn't budge. When he looked at Mira again, her face seemed split, only half of it clearly visible. The rest was swallowed in blur. "I need to get out of here," he mumbled, barely making it to the elevator as he stepped outside. Sunlight knifed through his skull. He doubled over near the curb, holding his head like it might crack open. He called his wife. "Natalie? I think I need to go to urgent care," he said, trying to sound calm but failing. "You said it was a migraine. Dan, what's going on?" she asked, alarm in her voice. "I can't see. Not well. In one eye. Something's really wrong." Within 20 minutes, she met him at a clinic on Bloor Street. By then, the shadow had grown darker, and the headache now pulsed with every heartbeat like a drum inside his skull. The nurse took one look at him and rushed him through triage. Within minutes, he was in an exam room, answering rapid-fire questions from a doctor who seemed far too serious for a migraine. "How long have you had the vision changes? Any weakness? Numbness? Slurred speech? Do you have a history of high blood pressure?" Daniel answered as best he could. No, and no. He was relatively healthy, didn't smoke, didn't drink excessively. Maybe a bit stressed, but who wasn't? "Let's get you in for imaging," the doctor said, stepping out briskly. Daniel turned to Natalie, who clutched his hand. "I thought this was just a headache," he said. "Why do they look so worried?" She didn't answer. Her eyes said enough. And for the first time that day, Daniel felt something worse than the pain. Fear. Daniel lay on a gurney, wheeled swiftly toward the imaging department, fluorescent ceiling panels flickering past like a stuttering film reel. "Hold still, Mr. Morgan. This won't take long," the technician said as she slid him into the CT scanner. His head was pounding worse now. The shadow in his vision had gone from a blur to a void. He tried closing his right eye. Nothing. Darkness in the left. It wasn't just fuzzy anymore. He couldn't see a thing out of it. He tried not to panic. He thought about his son's soccer practice that evening, his daughter's art show next weekend, the ad campaign he was supposed to finalize by Friday. He wasn't supposed to be lying on a gurney wondering if he was going blind. When the scan finished, Daniel was wheeled back to the emergency bay, where Natalie waited, her eyes wide with restrained tears. She looked like she was trying to be strong, but her knuckles were white around the edges of her phone. A doctor in blue scrubs entered with a clipboard, accompanied by a younger resident. His expression was serious, but not panicked. "Daniel," he said. "I'm Dr. Patel, neurology. We have your CT results." Daniel straightened. "Okay, it's just a migraine, right?" Dr. Patel gave him a measured look. "I don't think so. What you're experiencing may be something called a transient ischemic attack, or TIA, a kind of mini-stroke. But there's also evidence suggesting this could be something more complex, like optic neuritis. We're going to need an MRI to be sure." Daniel blinked, but that didn't help his vision. "Wait, are you saying this is neurological?" "It appears to be," Dr. Patel replied. You mentioned no history of migraines like this. The sudden vision loss, especially in just one eye, raises red flags. We need to look deeper. Natalie looked stunned. But he's healthy. He's 37. He doesn't smoke, he exercises. He just ran a 10K last month. Dr. Patel nodded sympathetically. I understand. But stroke and neurological conditions can happen even in people without obvious risk factors. The key now is figuring out exactly what's going on and acting quickly. Daniel felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. He'd always thought of strokes as something that happened to elderly people, or people with uncontrolled high blood pressure. He certainly didn't think of himself, a guy with a smartwatch that tracked his steps and a fridge full of organic yogurt, as a candidate. The MRI was scheduled within the hour. As they waited, Daniel sat still, feeling each second pass like a brick added to his chest. I should have come in sooner, he muttered. Natalie squeezed his hand. Don't blame yourself. You didn't know. But Daniel did blame himself. He'd ignored the subtle signs, brushed them off as stress or poor sleep, that occasional tingling in his fingers last month, the fleeting moment of confusion when trying to remember a colleague's name. The blinding headache wasn't the beginning. It was the escalation point 2 hours later. Dr. Patel returned with the results. His tone had shifted, still calm, but more direct. The MRI shows that you've had a small stroke in the occipital lobe, the part of the brain responsible for processing visual information. It's what's caused the vision loss in your left eye. Daniel stared at him, stunned. I've had a stroke. Yes, Dr. Patel confirmed. It was likely ischemic, meaning a small clot temporarily cut off blood flow. We're lucky it wasn't more widespread, but the damage to the visual cortex is real. Natalie gasped, covering her mouth. But he's young, Dr. Patel nodded. It's rare in younger adults, but not unheard of, especially if there are undiagnosed underlying issues. We'll need to run further tests to find out what might have caused it. Could be a clotting disorder, could be something else entirely. Daniel sat in silence. The word stroke echoed in his mind like thunder in a canyon. He had come in for what he thought was a migraine. Now, his life had taken a turn he never saw coming. Neurologist visits, and nurses checking vitals every 4 hours. Daniel was now in a private room at Toronto General Hospital, staring out the window with his good eye while Natalie tried to nap on the recliner beside his bed. Every few minutes, his hand reached up instinctively to cover his left eye. Still nothing. Just darkness. No fliques. No chaps. No light. He couldn't stop replaying the moment the doctor said it. Stroke. And not the temporary kind they initially suspected. A full ischemic stroke with visual cortex involvement. Any changes in vision? The nurse asked during her next round. He shook his head. Still gone on the left. The nurse gave a tight-lipped nod. Doctor said we'd keep monitoring, but don't lose hope. The brain can surprise you. He appreciated her trying, but even she didn't sound convinced. Later that afternoon, Dr. Patel returned with the results of the additional testing. Natalie sat up immediately, brushing her hair from her face. We found something, Dr. Patel said, carefully. There's a genetic clotting disorder called factor V Leiden. It's a mutation that can increase your risk of forming abnormal blood clots. Your results came back positive. Daniel frowned. I've never even heard of that. It's often undiagnosed until someone has a clot-related event. Many people don't know they carry the gene until something like this happens. Can run in families. Have you ever had family members with unexplained strokes or blood clots? Daniel thought for a moment. My uncle had a stroke in his early 50s. My dad's cousin died of a pulmonary embolism, I think. No one ever mentioned anything genetic, though. Dr. Patel nodded. It fits. And with the stress you've been under, and sitting at a desk most days, the conditions were perfect for a clot to form. Daniel leaned back against the pillow, trying to absorb it all. So now what? We'll start you on anticoagulants, blood thinners. It's not a cure, but it will help reduce the risk of another clot. You'll also meet with a hematologist and likely have to make some lifestyle adjustments. Nothing too radical, but things like staying hydrated, moving more during long workdays, and avoiding certain medications. Natalie exhaled beside him. But what about his vision? Is it permanent? Dr. Patel hesitated. It's hard to say. Some patients regain partial vision. Some don't. The brain has some ability to rewire, especially in younger people. We'll start vision therapy, and you'll work with a neuro-ophthalmologist. Daniel stared at his hands, suddenly overwhelmed. A week ago, he'd been pitching a campaign to a global tech client and planning a weekend hike with his son. Now he was being told he had a lifelong genetic condition, that he'd had a stroke, and that part of his vision might never return. That night, after Natalie went home to check on the kids, Daniel lay alone in the hospital room, scrolling through pictures on his phone. His daughter Ava's 6th birthday. His son Milo holding a frog at the cottage. A selfie of him and Natalie from their anniversary dinner that he kept covering and uncovering his left eye. He had no idea how to be the same man with half his vision gone. How would he drive? Would he still be able to work the same job? Play soccer with Milo? Read bedtime stories to Ava without skipping words because the text blurred at the edge? Then something inside him shifted. Not a miracle, not clarity, but a decision that he might be different now. He might never get full sight back. But this didn't get to define him. He picked up his phone and searched. How to live well after stroke-related vision loss. Upbeat music. It was frustrating, slow, and humbling. Daniel started outpatient therapy just 2 weeks after discharge, working with a neuro-ophthalmologist and occupational therapist at a rehabilitation center near his home in Toronto. Try to catch the ball. The therapist, a woman named Camilla, instructed gently, tossing a small foam sphere toward him from the side of his blind eye. Bounced off his shoulder. Don't worry, she added quickly. This is exactly what we expect. The goal is to retrain your brain to anticipate what your eye no longer tells you. Daniel was still adjusting to the world's new shape. Doors on his left would surprise him. Crossing the street became a cautious operation. His peripheral vision felt like a dead zone, and it was deeply disorienting. More than once, he bumped into chairs, spilled coffee, or missed a handshake. Natalie tried to keep things light. You've got a built-in excuse to ignore annoying people on your left, she joked once. But Daniel often caught the worry in her eyes, especially when he nearly stepped in front of a cyclist on a busy sidewalk. Back at home, he found solace in routine, making the kids breakfast, walking short distances, reading, even if slower now, with larger font settings. Work was trickier. His team had been understanding, and his boss had reassigned some of his clients, but returning to the fast-paced world of advertising was like jumping onto a moving train. Especially when the screen felt overwhelming and the headaches came easily. In a quiet moment during a follow-up, his neurologist asked, "How are you, Daniel?" Not just physically, mentally. Daniel hesitated. I feel like I've lost something I didn't know I needed this much. My confidence, maybe. My sense of safety. I can't unsee what happened. No pun intended. Dr. Patel nodded. That's common. Many stroke survivors, even young ones, experience a kind of identity shift. This might be a good time to talk to someone, a psychologist familiar with neurological trauma. Daniel reluctantly agreed, and after a few sessions with a stroke recovery counselor, he realized just how much he'd internalized his fear. The fear of another stroke. The fear of becoming a burden. The fear of never being whole again. But therapy helped him name those fears and slowly take away their power. One afternoon, as he sat in the park with Natalie watching their kids chase bubbles across the grass, he said something he hadn't dared to until that moment. I thought I was broken, but maybe I'm just healing in a different shape. Natalie looked over and smiled, her eyes shining. I've never loved you more. The vision in his left eye didn't come back. Not completely, but there were moments, like when he stood facing the sunset and saw a soft glimmer on the edge of darkness, that he could almost believe in light again. And in a way, he had gained new sight, not through his eyes, but through clarity about his limits, his resilience, and the fragility of time. 6 months later, Daniel stood at the front of a conference room in downtown Toronto, laptop open, slides ready, and heart pounding. IT was his first in-person presentation since the stroke. He'd practiced for days, rehearsing how to scan the audience with just one functioning eye, how to pause instead of stammer when his brain hesitated mid-sentence, and how to breathe through the fear that still crept in quietly, like a shadow on his left. The campaign pitch was for a health tech startup focused on wearable diagnostics, something Daniel now felt deeply connected to. Not just as a marketer, but as a survivor. He began with a simple line. 6 months ago, I thought I had a migraine. By nightfall, I had lost vision in one eye. By morning, I'd learned I'd had a stroke. The room was silent. This isn't a sob story, he continued. It's a story about how we miss warning signs, especially when we think we're too young, Too healthy, or too busy for something serious to happen. He explained how technology, like the startup's product, could catch the subtle warning signs that so often slip through the cracks. How he wished he'd had a wearable that detected elevated clotting risks or strange patterns in his blood pressure. By the end, the team applauded not just the idea, but the raw, real conviction in Daniel's voice. It wasn't just marketing anymore. It was personal. Outside the building, Natalie was waiting in their car. He climbed in, exhaling deeply. "You crushed it, didn't you?" she said, handing him a protein bar. "I think I did," he smiled. "And I didn't even walk into a wall on the way out." They laughed. Felt good to laugh. Life hadn't gone back to what it was. It had evolved. He now used a specialized reading app and took frequent screen breaks. He'd learned to turn his head fully when crossing the street, and his phone's home screen had been reorganized for easier one-eyed access. Most importantly, he had boundaries now. He didn't skip workouts. He drank water like it was his job. He went for walks. He saw his kids off to school every morning, something he used to sleep through half the week. He showed up point one Saturday. Milo asked, "Dad, can you still play soccer with me? Or is your eye too broken?" Daniel knelt down and smiled. "It's not broken, it's just different. But I can still play. I just need you to stay on my right side. Okay?" "Okay." Milo beamed and ran outside, ball in hand. That evening, Daniel wrote a post on LinkedIn that went viral. "I had a stroke at 38. I lost half my vision in one eye, but I gained something else. Clarity. Don't ignore the signs. Don't brush off strange headaches or fatigue or numbness just because you have too much going on. Health doesn't wait for a convenient moment to fall apart. Today I gave a talk with one eye and a whole heart. That's more than enough." The comments poured in, some from strangers, some from colleagues, some from people who had silently experienced the same terror and thought they were alone. Daniel wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living, purposefully, imperfectly, gratefully. And even with darkness on his left, he could finally see clearly again.